From the racing capital of the world, Indianapolis, Indiana, actually via Austin, Texas, at the Circuit of the Americas. Welcome back to the season finale and a very, very big show for us here at the greatest spectacle in podcasting, the Seventh Gear Over Rev Show, presented to you by our great friends over at KrausMeats.com, purveyors of the finest small batch handcrafted artisan meats and sausages anywhere around, as well as our good friends and partners over at Respect Your Package and Dick Carriers, makers of those ultra high-end premium breathable men's underwear. They are respectfully scandalous and unapologetic. And as I mentioned at the top of the show here, folks, as usual, I am your host, Kevin Kraus, and we have a mega show for you here this week. We're going to do our F1 season wrap-up, as well as some big milestones to celebrate here at the Seventh Gear Over Rev Show. And I couldn't think of anybody better to do this with than my good friend, former co-host of the Seventh Gear Over Rev Show. He is gracing us with his presence this week. The man, the myth, the legend, my good friend, Mr. John McGrath. John, how in the hell are you, buddy? Welcome back.
I am. Thank you. Yeah, I knew I had to kind of come back for this episode and talk about the wrapping up of the Formula One season, with as kind of crazy as it was, and just kind of catch up a little bit, especially now that it's our 100th episode. I think that's fantastic.
Hell yeah. And you're a big part of that. And we'll get to that here in just a second. But before we talk about that in detail, I know, John, you kind of had to leave us because another passion project of yours has kind of gotten some pretty good legs. Your photography business is thriving and is doing well and it's growing. Bring everybody in Seventh Gear Land here up to speed as to what's been going on with John McGrath and Late Night Lap.
Yeah. So like you said, Late Night Lap is my Instagram handle. That's where I see a lot of, most of my interactions. So it's just as it sounds, Late Night Lap, at Late Night Lap over on Instagram, where now I have a whole website, which is latenightlappmedia.com. So if you feel like heading over there and checking out my portfolio, that's all there as well. But yeah, it's been going really good. I've been having a lot of more clients come up to me wanting photos of their cars. I get a lot of high-end cars here lately. I think probably the craziest car that I found out about, that I was given a call about. Some of you may not even know about this car. It's called the Zinger. It's absolutely insane. It's a supercar. It's all mostly 3D printed out in California. And my good friend Brian and Kelly, they called me and said, "Hey, are you going to be at this Caffeine and Fuel, which is the local cars and coffee?" One of the things I kind of helped a little bit get going. And I was like, "Yeah, probably. Okay." Which I thought was odd that they were hitting me up like that. Well, then I found out why, because they had this multi-billion-dollar car sitting there. So, and tomorrow I have a Lamborghini event that I was invited to, that I'll be at Graham Rahal Performance, which is also another, kind of a shocker. But it's been really picking up, and it's been really, really going well, actually.
That's fantastic, John. So now Seventh Gear Overhead fans, now you know why John is not with us on a regular basis, because he's got some really cool things going on. I'm kind of bummed that I'm not going to be there this weekend, because he's in my backyard at Graham Rahal Performance for that event, as I'm out here at the Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Texas, for the final AMG Experience event of the season. But like I said at the top of the show, gang, there's so much great stuff to talk about in this week's episode, and I couldn't think of anybody better to come on to talk about F1 as well as the show than John, because he was a big part of that. But we kind of alluded to it earlier on. Tonight's episode, the one that you are watching right now, is our 100th episode on the audio side, and we just hit the 10,000 downloads mark just yesterday, as a matter of fact. So that's pretty big deal. I'm really excited about that. I'm happy about that. John, you've been a big part of that. And just thinking, when we started this show back in the COVID era, I didn't even know that I'd be able to talk for 15 minutes, let alone go an hour, or, have a co-host like you or some of the great guests that we've had. I mean, we've had everybody from, just recently we've had Derek Daly on, we've had Ralph Howard Hansen, we've had Danny Sullivan, we've had Willie T. Ribbs, we've had Paul Page, we've had Tommy Kendall, Jack Baldwin, Jordan Missig, and so many more, Roberto Guerrero, in fact. A ton of great guests. We've got a ton more coming along. But the fact that have hit those big milestones, the 100th show today, 10,000 downloads yesterday. We're heard in 114 countries worldwide, which blows my mind to think that we're heard all over the world right now. But it's thanks to you listeners. We love the fact that you like what we're doing, and we continue to encourage you to share that, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. We're trying to grow that subscriber rate because we're really going to be putting the big push on for our YouTube channel here coming up in 2026. More details on some of the cool stuff we've got going on for that later on in the show. But man, what a privilege it is to be heard and that many times by that many people over all those countries. We can't thank you enough. So please, continue to like us, share us with your friends and family, subscribe, help us grow the channel. That helps our show partners out. It certainly helps us out as well. But uh, again, we'll get more into that in a little bit here as we get further into the greatest spectacle in podcasting. But holy smokes, John, did we not have an epic Formula One season here in 2025 with Lando finally eking out the championship just last weekend in Abu Dhabi? Thoughts?
Yeah, and many. I don't want to gravitate to negative because I know that's kind of the natural human thing to do. So, but yes, congratulations to Lando for getting his World Drivers' Championship. Congratulations to McLaren for getting another Constructors' Championship as well. As a matter of fact, I'm listening to Zach Brown's book right now. I even bought a signed autographed copy of his book.
Wow,
So
look at you.
yeah, I know. Well, a lot of people hate Zach Brown, so but I find the guy interesting. But as far as the drivers' championship goes, yeah, I mean, it was a roller coaster ride. We all sort of counted Max out about 2/3 of the way through the season. And then all of a sudden he does what Max does and comes back in this massive resurgence and finds speed where he shouldn't have. Which of course makes him he is one of the greatest drivers. He will go down as one of the greatest drivers in Formula One history. But I feel like with McLaren, and this is probably going to be the biggest topic of the season as far as McLaren goes, was for a while there, who did they want to win the World Drivers' Championship? Did it have a support of Oscar or did it have the support of Lando? We didn't know because of the stupid papaya rules. And yeah, they're stupid. I'm sorry. It's a team sport. I think for me, you have two drivers who are number one seeded drivers as far as I'm concerned. And I've said it before on this very podcast. Oscar will win a World Drivers' Championship. And I've said that well before this season. So, yeah, I just feel like they just need to let those two guys race, let them do their thing. Hopefully, they don't wreck each other. Monza. And just let them drive, let them be the race car driver. Especially, I think, from what I've heard, like even Mark Webber, who was Oscar Piastri's manager, after a couple of the races with the decisions that were made in favor of Lando, pretty much if looks could kill, Mark Webber would have nuked Zach Brown.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. And it got to the point here in this final run where Max went on a tear that, and I'm sure you as well as many of our seventh year over of listeners and viewers saw the memes on the internet about they weren't favoring either Oscar or Orlando. They were favoring Max, it seemed like, with the decisions that were being
Yes.
made. And then of course you had that double DQ in Vegas. And it was like it sure seemed like they were doing everything to let Max sort of sneak in and swoop out, and scoop that championship away when they had it pretty well in hand, just a handful of races earlier in the year.
Yeah, they should have. The World Driver Championship should have been wrapped up probably 3 races ago. I mean, it actually should have probably ended if they would have just let them race and not do stupid decisions. Bad strategy as well. Let's look at that as well. I think mathematically Lando could have won it in Vegas. Of course, we didn't get that. And let's not forget too. While yes, I'm happy that we have a new champion because for the last God knows how long we've only had Hamilton, Nico Rosberg in there, and then Max. That's the only champions we've had in the last several. I don't really know the exact number. I'm not going to try to even say it because I'll get it wrong.
Well, I,
But
honestly, I think the last world champion that wasn't named Hamilton or Verstappen was Nico Rosberg, and that was like
that's it.
2016.
Exactly. Yeah, Nico's like the kind of the wild card of the bunch, right? And people often forget that because Max and Lewis have always been there all the time. So that's kind of my little dig at the P1 podcast. Matt forgot about Nico Rosberg. Anyways, but I love those guys. But anyways, so yeah, it just kind of bewildered me about how badly they handled the last third of the season. I guess he may be close. It was just like you were saying. It was like, are you just trying to let Max win? And like there was at one point, what was it? Was it Vegas or Qatar? I can't remember. They completely underestimated Max. Like, how the hell do you underestimate Max Verstappen? Are you insane? Of course, it didn't really matter because in Qatar, of course, they both got the double DNF or disqualified rather, which I have my feelings on. My, I guess it's a hot take because I didn't like how that whole thing went down. But nonetheless, we are where we are. Max is no longer the champion. Red Bull is no longer the constructors champion. We have it all with McLaren.
That's true. And there's more layers to this to dig into, right? Because we had the double DQ in Vegas, and you and I have had several conversations, and I know you've had several interactions with some very uh, committed individuals in terms of their viewpoint on this whole plank wear deal, which was like zero point
Yeah.
zero 0.03 millimeters. But
Yeah.
be that as it may, so you take that out of the equation. So that was potentially a clinching race had the double DQ not happened. Then, but talking about questionable strategy, you get to Qatar and they don't pit either of them in the early safety car deal when Max and everybody. What were you thinking? Was this paralysis by analysis, John? Was this McLaren getting in their own way? Or did they just, between Zach and Andrea, just cock this one up?
Yes. um, all of those things. It's just it was overconfidence in their cars and their drivers, and it was again underestimating Max. And yeah, everybody pitted. Like, why would you? I didn't understand it when they said we have flexibility. No, you don't. Not as long as Max Verstappen is out there in a car that's not broken. It, why would you even think you had any sort of flexibility in this sort of thing? Because the guy is tenacious. That's why he is the four-time world champion. Some could argue three, but we don't get into that today.
Right.
And when you sit there and you have, oh, we have flexibility, don't tell your drivers that. I think and this is something I learned from Zach Brown himself in his book, don't give information to drivers they don't need. Well, in this case, when they were saying, hey, should we pit? Don't tell them you have flexibility because the human mind maybe slows them down a little bit. Formula One drivers, maybe not, but still, that you're putting that in their head, right? And then you completely cock it up when it's realized later down the road, oh, we should have pitted because now we're on old tires and we have to pit. And oh, there goes Max. End of story.
Right. Honestly, as I told you when we were having that conversation via text message, at that rate, the only way they would have had flexibility is if they knew without a shadow of a doubt that they were going to get a late safety car, which there was no way of knowing that. Their simulations and their models back in England, you know, could have given them probabilities and odds and that sort of thing. But unless they knew 100% that there was going to be a late safety car, they had no flexibility. They would have been better off knowing that Max basically undercut them early on. They'd have been better off taking their chances and double stacking those guys to give them a fighting chance. But they didn't do that either. They rolled the dice and completely F that one up.
No, and historically, the safety car has not come out very often at Qatar or Abu Dhabi. Those two tracks are, they're pretty fast, they're pretty straightforward. It's pretty rare that you can bank on something like a safety car. Now, if we're talking someplace like Brazil where they used to end it, okay, maybe that's a possibility. But I think I don't think it was just one thing that caused this massive screw up in strategy. I think it was just a combination of overconfidence in one area, uh, underestimating your opponent, and thinking that somehow this was going to work out. And I think it's really at the end of the day, that's all it was. I think it's between those two things that they just thought, oh, Max and Oscar, or I'm sorry, Lando and Oscar are this fast. We'll be okay. You're not okay.
Right. Apparently, it's blind faith, and perhaps Zach was just thinking that he knew it all, and it was just going to somehow magically work out. But now, here's a couple of questions I have for you, John, and seventh year overhead fans. You can give us your thoughts on this as well. But what lessons do you think that Zach and Andrea Stella are going to take into this offseason so that they don't make this same mistake again next year? So that's question one. So let's start there.
Wow. Well, from what I know, and again, this is going back to the book, Zach doesn't actually make calls during the race. He lets the rest of the team handle that. He's just there. He stays off the radio. He only talks to Andrea, as far as I know, and even then, it's not in a strategy capacity. Whether or not how true that is, I don't know. Take that as you will. I think the lessons that they need to learn, though, from this is that they either need to decide who their primary driver is, then tell the other driver, sorry, you are the number two driver. This is how it is, the team sport. Or they need to tell their drivers, listen, there's no papaya rules, there's no silliness, there's nothing going on. You guys race. Whoever wins, wins. Whoever doesn't win, doesn't win. There's no favoritism. We're not going to tell somebody, even if it favors us to do so. We can't tell one driver or another, hey, back out, let so and so pass. To me, you have two number one drivers, let them race. That's what their job is, especially for somebody like Oscar Piastri, who while he seems on the outside doesn't have a whole lot of emotion, he controls his emotions very well. But there have been times this season where we saw that he was clearly upset, and every time rightfully so, or at least most of the time. I'm sure there's a couple instances there where and this, Kevin, as a race car driver yourself, there are some things you don't know during the race. Then you realize, you'd say, well, why did that guy do that? Then you look at the tape and you're like, hell yeah, okay, that was my fault. But I think that's the biggest problem with McLaren right now. While they're, yes, we can say, hey, they're the world champions in both the drivers and constructors, which is great. They almost fell apart under their own weight.
And that's a great way to phrase that. A couple of things along those lines, John, where you say they sort of almost collapsed on their own weight. So in terms of papaya rules and letting them race, so you knew everybody in the free world, and maybe even the not so free world, knew early on that Oscar was not real happy with some of the rules being played out. Like what was it back in Singapore at the start where Lando came barging through, and Lando came on, or Piastri came on the radio and said, "Oh, so this is how we're going to race now," and effectively was like,
Yeah.
when is this going to come back my way? So I guess the other sort of conspiracy theory in me is like, okay, yes, McLaren wrapped up the constructors championship races eons ago. It's seasons ago. It almost feels like at this point they just finally eked out the drivers championship. Is there a brewing discontent within Team McLaren, particularly with drivers, but secondarily within the team as a whole? And the reason I say that is because I understand that after the double DQ at Vegas, many team members, not just the drivers, were very upset, frustrated, disappointed, annoyed, but felt as though and this is my sources telling me this, that they didn't feel like they could raise those concerns because of the culture that Andrea and Zach had set within McLaren. Like they wouldn't be allowed to speak up to voice their displeasure at how that all went down. So is there a problem potentially moving into 2026 between Oscar and Lando with the way that was all managed? And is there a bigger internal problem that could be maybe a festering cancer that could limit them from repeating as world champions?
Yeah, I think the problem is it starts with Andrea and Zach. Let's look at the root of the problem, not the causation afterward. You have to understand, and not you, but I think people have to understand that Formula One drivers, no driver, and again, going back to your experience as a race car driver, I don't know of any driver in the world who's ever gotten into a race car and said, "Yeah, second's cool." Ever, never.
Doesn't happen.
Doesn't happen. They're all very competitive. And especially when you have Oscar Piastri, whose manager is Mark Webber. Now, if you know anything about Formula One history, you know how competitive he was, and you know his fallout with Red Bull and how that all went down with Sebastian Vettel. It's almost the same thing, isn't it? While Zach can put on a smiley face and be the bubbly guy that he is, which is great, we have to face facts here. They are creating that environment where probably Oscar doesn't feel like he's ever going to get a fair shake because it's clear that Lando is the driver. That being said, they need to establish this. If they don't want, or if they want rather, Oscar to just be the rear gunner, then they need to say that. In turn, he could sit around contract wise, whatever that may be, and say, I don't want to be the rear gunner. I don't want to be the number two. I want to be the man. I want to be the number one driver. I want to be the champion. And by all rights, he can say that. He can do that. He's already proven he has the skill. When he's given a good car, he's amazing. Now, I don't know what happened to him, kind of that midway struggle that he was having when, like, even Jos Verstappen said it, like, did the guy forget to drive? Because it wasn't a matter of giving him a worse car. Dude was putting the car in the wall and having, just bad days. But then again, he would get screwed over by bad strategy, whatever it may be. But I think at this point, the team does need to look at themselves in the mirror and say, is there something we're doing that's cultivating this entire situation? And I think it is. I think they are, without saying it directly, favoring Lando. They just need to say it, be transparent. And if not, then Oscar can go somewhere else. I mean, good God. I mean, there are plenty of teams out there who are going to be looking for good drivers. He's one of the finest out there. So I believe the issue does go back to the leadership. I think they tried to play favorites. They didn't know who to play favorite of because Oscar was doing so well. And it kind of screwed things up. I think that screwed up the plan. That's why I think maybe next year they just need you to say, either be definitive in their decision of, hey, you're number one, you're number two, or hey, you guys go at it. Whatever happens, happens. We're not gonna,
Right.
whatever happens on the track, we're not gonna dictate it.
Right. And hopefully you don't take each other out. But now, speaking of, that culture that's been set within McLaren that maybe has muddied the waters. Now, in the aftermath of the season, there's another team that has culture questions, big culture questions, and it is that of former four
Drag.
consecutive time world champion Max Verstappen and Red Bull. We saw earlier in the season that Christian Horner was finally let go to be put on gardening leave after the whole texting scandal, right? We have yet to see anybody be able to get close to Max in the second car, sort of the Red Bull curse, the second driver curse. And now you've got Dr. Helmut Marko, as of today, stepping down as advisor, partially
Thank
due to
God.
the comments that he made about Kimi Antonelli intentionally giving Lando Norris the second place there, those extra 2 points or third place, whatever it was, in Qatar, which happened just coincidentally happened to be the margin of the championship. And then, and I don't know if you've read this. I didn't get a chance to talk to you about it today, but apparently Helmut went out and he signed that Arvid Lindblad to be the Racing Bulls driver to partner with Lawson next year, unbeknownst to the board at Red Bull, but signed him anyway, which when they found out they weren't crazy about. But he also signed another driver, Darren. I forget exactly his last name. His name slips my mind at the moment. But that was another one that he signed without Red Bull knowing. And Red Bull was pissed and demanded that he terminate the contract of this guy, saying that he was not going to be a future part of their development program, and ultimately wound up having to pay him out several hundreds of thousands of dollars to terminate that contract. So now I feel like Helmut Marko is either losing his mind and becoming senile and just piping off like your drunk uncle at Christmas, or the crazy old grandfather that's making decisions that he shouldn't be making. So now he's out, and you've got Christian Horner out. Thank God you've got Lauren Mekies that kind of held everything together. But is this now also a culture shock? Are we about to see even a slight seismic shift in the power base that is Formula One coming for 2026?
Yeah, it's hard to tell. Because I think with the losing of Christian Horner and Helmut Marko, I think that's a positive for Red Bull, to be honest. Uh, I mean, listen, I have always stood by this statement. I've always called Helmut Marko Emperor Palpatine of Formula One because he is the guy.
Yeah.
You know, the guy. I was making comments today anywhere I could make it, and people were laughing at it. It was like, oh, Emperor Marko Palpatine helmet is gone. Good. Uh, because the guy, listen, I know there's a lot of people who say, oh, well, he was just tough. He was the head of Red Bull Development Driver Program and he was the race advisor and all this other stuff. That's what his job was to be. And well, there's plenty of other guys out there that do that and they aren't complete jerks like he was. I mean, let's go back to the Kimi Antonelli situation, right? After him, and it was also GP, it was also Max's engineer hinting that, well, actually not even hinting, just blaming Kimi Antonelli. Kid's 19 years old. He's a Formula One driver. He's already got enough pressure on him, right? He also went to school during the time. We also heard how he was like doing his studies, and so this kid's under a ton of pressure. Also, let's not forget he replaced Lewis. That's massive shoes to fill. That fact, he'll be lucky if he can get his toes in their shoes. That's just how Formula One is. But then the kid gets death threats, and let's face it, the source was from those comments by Helmut Marko. And unfortunately, you do have very fanatical fans out there, especially European fans. I mean, look how things go with I'll just say it the right way for them. Look at how when their football fans go crazy, their passion goes beyond passion. It goes almost like this crazy, like dangerous thing in their head where they make these terrible threats. And now you have Kimi Antonelli dealing with that. And the apology that Red Bull gave was, I'm sorry, it wasn't an apology. It was, oh, well, we regret saying that they said that. Yeah, and like you didn't even say you were very sorry for what happened, nothing like that. And maybe they think that's what their apology should have been, the way they wrote it. Maybe they thought that was sufficient. I mean, obviously they did. They released that statement. But I think the culture there now, I think, may be for the better. I think also if Max's dad, Yost, maybe steps back a little bit, which he won't, and just lets the team do their thing, I think it might be a better situation as well. I guess we'll just have to see. I guess the other culture point I want to touch upon too, since we're talking about team culture, is Ferrari.
Mm-hmm.
You have, oh shoot, his name escapes me now. Anyway, the head of Ferrari essentially saying that, and I'm paraphrasing here, maybe drivers should just shut up.
Right.
Really? You have Leclerc, who is a phenomenal driver. He's been dedicated to Ferrari almost all of his racing career, right? And then you have a 7-time world champion, Lewis Hamilton, telling you this car sucks. Now, I don't believe it's entirely the car because we've obviously seen Charles do fantastic or good at least in the car sometimes, which is pretty much a tractor. And then Lewis not even be close. I don't know what to make of that, but I don't say, I think maybe he's in his head a little bit, but I don't think it's entirely his fault. I think Ferrari just sucks to drive for right now, because the car was terrible. And the only time, and they did this thing that they always do where they will show you the car. Oh, the car just did this well this time. And then the season's end. Thanks, Ferrari.
Right.
So I don't know. I think those are the two. I think it's not going to get any better at Ferrari, I don't think. But I do think it might get better over at Red Bull.
Well, and actually, it's interesting that you bring up Ferrari because I was going to get to that, and because I was having this very conversation today about Ferrari and F1,
thinking alike.
and it's like, people are asking me, they're like, "How is Lewis so bad? He's lost it. He's over the hill. He's washed up." And I'm like, "Wait a second. I understand that he didn't get out of Q1 the last 3 races in a row, but let's not forget." The man, as you said, John, he's a 7-time world champion. He did podium in one of the early season sprint races. So it's not like Lewis somehow suddenly forgot how to drive, right? So let's just put that to bed. Yes, I know he's 40 years old, but let's also remember, because people now want to say, oh, when they signed him, he was going to be the second coming of Michael Schumacher. Well, I got news for you, gang. This is not the Michael Schumacher's Ferrari anymore. You don't have Luca de Montezemolo, running the show over there and making the decisions. You've got a whole different board, a whole different group of decision makers, group of engineers, and you don't have a Jean Todt. You don't have, a Ross Brawn like like Schumacher had to really be able to rally the troops and get the car to his liking. Now, the differential, because I wondered this too, I'm like, how can Lewis be so far off of Charles in the other car? It's not all that different from what happens with Max and driver A, B, C, D, E, F at Red Bull, right? He's been there long enough that the car is pretty well catered to him, designed and built around him. Lewis is the new kid on the block, despite the fact that he's a 7-time world champion. But I don't see that it's going to get any better because the president of Ferrari doesn't want to hear it, right? They don't want to hear that the car is not to the level of even AMG Petronas Mercedes, let alone Red Bull, let alone McLaren, right? Now, interestingly, a few weeks ago on this show, Seventh Year Overhead Fans, I was having this discussion also with Derek Daly, who's a former Formula One driver himself, a longtime IndyCar analyst, IndyCar driver. His son Connor drives. We had an interesting conversation of the similarities and the differences between Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton, and if that boded well or not so well for Ferrari. And we both kind of arrived at the same conclusion: is that Charles' approach to car development and Lewis's approach to car development and how to get the most out of it were too similar to be enough to really pull the best out of the team to make the car as good as it could be to get them to that sharp end of the stick, so to speak. And especially when you're upper management and the team doesn't want to hear criticisms from a 7-time world champion that didn't magically forget how to drive. He knows what a good car should be like. I mean, Seventh Year Overhead fans, I'm sure you watched that finale last weekend in Abu Dhabi and you heard Lewis talking about, he's like, I know who I'm racing. You don't need to tell me who I'm racing. They're giving him innocuous, ridiculous, stupid things to worry about instead of dealing with the basics of how to make the car better.
Yeah, and also too, he did bring that car from what was it, 16th or something to 7th, I believe. I don't remember now, but he made significant progress in that race with the situation that he's been handed. And yeah, I remember like, going back to what you were saying with the Schumacher era. Ferrari listened to Schumacher. Even in the road cars, they listened to what he had to say as far as car development goes. Like, for example, did you know in Ferraris there's that red set button where you can flip it to track and whatever else, right? Well, Michael Schumacher back then when he was with Ferrari actually said to the engineers, "Hey, you know what would be a good idea for the road cars? If the car is in a stiffer position, maybe they have it in track or sport, whatever it is. What if we just push the knob and that automatically defaults to a softer riding car? Maybe you're going through a cobblestone city or something, and for that short amount of time that you're going through that town, all you gotta do is hit that one button." And they put it in that road car, and they still do it to this day. Do you think that would happen with Lewis Hamilton today if he was doing the same thing? No, because it's not the same Ferrari as it was during the Schumacher era. Just isn't.
100% true.
They are all. I mean, even I know I'm sort of going off on the road side, the civilian side of things here, but one overlaps the other. Okay, it's gotten to the point to where Ferrari, you can't even buy a Ferrari firsthand unless they want you to. Okay, uh, if you want a Ferrari, then you're just maybe let's say me, I just win the lottery. Well, I want a 296, brand new 296. I want one. I can't buy one brand new. I have to try to find one on the used market because Ferrari has no idea who I am. Their culture doesn't know who I am. So therefore, they don't care about me. It doesn't matter how much money I have. It's all about culture and status with Ferrari. And so they're going to keep driving that home both on the civilian road side and in the Formula One side. That's just who they are. And it's working. They're one of the most profitable companies in the world. I hate to say it that way, but it's true because they're making exclusivity the product, not the car. So now they're going to do the same thing to the Formula One drivers. Even if it is Lewis Hamilton, they're not going to care. It's going to come to a point to where he's not going to have the same skill, not going to have the same reaction anymore. I guarantee you, Ferrari will throw him away like a bag of old Chinese food and never think about him again. It doesn't matter because that's the culture at Ferrari, and it's abysmal. It's so sad to see that that's happening. And it's just how it is today with Ferrari, and it's going to continue on. I don't think it's going to stop. I think Charles would probably never leave Ferrari. He's going to He started in one. He's going to end in one whenever he decides to retire. I don't ever see him leaving that team, no matter what happens. And next year we'll just have to see how it goes. I think if it goes bad for Lewis next year, I think if we have the same results where the car just him and the car don't mesh or they won't listen to him, I think Lewis is done. I really do, which is sad because I think if he was in a good car, I think if he was still at Mercedes, we'd see him for at least another 3 4 years. But I think if the season goes next year with the new car, it's over for Lewis.
It could very well be. And, a couple of things as you're talking there, John, that I got to think about is like, I like Charles Leclerc. I think he's a wonderful driver, but he's not a Max Verstappen. He's not a Lewis Hamilton. He's not a Michael Schumacher. He doesn't have that ability to transform a team like Michael Schumacher did. And I don't know that he ever will. And I'm not saying he's not a good driver. I'm not saying I dislike him. I just say that's my take on Charles Leclerc. Now, here's the other interesting point that I thought of as well. Everybody made a big deal about Lewis Hamilton leaving Mercedes to go to Ferrari. And what was the overriding news cycle story about when Lewis signed with Ferrari? It wasn't, oh, we're going to make Ferrari world champions again. It was, oh, look at what the valuation of Ferrari has now gone to with the signing of Lewis Hamilton. How many billions of dollars did it go up in value?
Oh, it was insane the percentage on their stocks on whatever was going on. It was I don't even remember now, but it by them signing him on as a driver, the recognition because you think about just the merchandise alone, right, is going to be what who knows what percentage is on that one, right? And then their like their stocks and yeah, the valuation of Ferrari went through the roof. I think maybe I'm putting my tinfoil hat on here. I think they knew that, but they also knew it was going to be a short term relationship with him because of his age. And they probably damn well knew that he wasn't going to win a championship. But it's again, I think it all goes back to the money, which it always does, and exactly what he was going to bring to the table for this short amount of time he was there. And it's really sad because he deserves so much better than that. I mean, I've had my criticisms of him both on and off the track.
As
Um,
have I.
yeah, but the more I've gotten to understand the man, the more the more I respect him. Even I may not agree with everything he says and does, but the guy's genuine. He believes what he says. He believes in what he does, and I totally that's something for me personally. If somebody really truly believes in what they're doing is good, and he does do good things, whether you like him or not, um, and he is obviously going to go down as one of the greatest drivers in history. Uh, the way Ferrari is treating him and what I think they're going to do to him is just unbelievably sad, and actually, frankly, it kind of pisses me off.
Agreed. Agreed. And I mean, it just goes to show, the priorities of Ferrari in 2025 versus the priorities of Ferrari in 1995 or
Right.
1996, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
Not to mention the fact that, you know, you could tell with Lewis's comments after Abu Dhabi that he is more than frustrated with the way the season played out at Ferrari. He said he's going to unplug, he's going to get rid of his phone, he's going to disappear and basically try to flush this season out of his mind because it ended that poorly. And I think he's that supremely frustrated, probably the most frustrated he's been in his Formula One career. If not for a long time, certainly maybe forever in forever.
Yeah, I don't recall a time where he has struggled so much. I mean, he never has, even when he was at McLaren, where he won his first world championship. Everything was great. I mean, Lewis has been, I don't want to say lucky because I don't think there's luck involved with how he's been, but Lewis has been so consistent in his winning ways that to suddenly come to Ferrari, which we heard Sebastian Vettel say at one time, deep down inside, everybody wants to drive for Ferrari. I don't know how true that is anymore because I sure as hell wouldn't. Hell, I mean, you could look at Red Bull. Who wants the cursed second seat? Nobody. And I fear for Hodger because, oh my God, good luck, kid. And I like him. But staying on Ferrari, um, yeah, and Lewis, I just don't think. I don't think we've ever seen. No, we've never seen it. I think it's probably goes without saying that we've never seen anything like this before with him. And maybe when he felt that way, he probably actually was probably more angry. I would say 2021 with the whole Abu Dhabi. Then I would say that's probably when he's been the angriest because even then people were like, well, is he going to retire from F1 because he's so frustrated? What's going to happen? We didn't hear from him for 3 months, literally. Like, no posting, no sign of him. Like, that dude totally went underground. I don't think it's as bad as that feeling for him, but as far as you know, hell, you talk about a guy who's 7 times, man. He's won a world championship. He's never known what it's to be out at the first qualifying run. He's never known that.
Right.
If you were to tell him 10 years ago, hey, you're going to be Ferrari, cool, huh? By the way, you're not going to get out of the first quarter or the first practice session. How do you think he would
Right.
feel? So
Yeah.
that's just,
It's
I
like
don't know.
nobody would believe that, including him.
Never, not a second. I wouldn't believe it. I mean, like, you're crazy. Because
Yeah.
you can give him a 2-cycle motorcycle and he'll figure out how to beat somebody. No,
Right.
but it's what it is. And I really fear that the end of his career is just going to be a damn disaster.
Unfortunately, I mean, I guess only time will tell. But I fear the same. All right, seventh year over fans, we've got a bit more to cover here on this Formula One season review of the 2025 season, won by McLaren's Lando Norris. But stay tuned for the greatest spectacle in podcasting. As we salute our partners here coming into the Christmas and New Year's season, let's give big thanks to our friends over at KrausMeats.com, the makers of the finest handcrafted artisan meats and sausages anywhere for that matter. I can say because I have I am a little bit biased, but it's a family history that spans over 100 years. Small batch, handcrafted. You are not going to find any finer meats or sausages anywhere in the world. So make sure that you check out KrausMeats.com for all of their latest offerings and their new lower pricing as we head into the holidays and post holidays for some of those last minute gifts. But also, let's give big thanks and props to our friends over at Dick Carriers and Respect Your Package, makers of the high end men's breathable underwear with ball bustier technology. Oh, yeah, baby. I wear them. I love them. You should too. They are respectfully scandalous yet unapologetic. And if you go to their website, which is respectyourpackage.com, and put in the promo code RESPECT7, which is the number 7, RESPECT7, you'll get 20% off of your order anywhere in the United States, not to be combined with any other offers. But hey, think about it. You get your favorite people a box of meat and some underwear. What better gift could you give for the Christmas holidays, right? So thanks to those guys for helping get our show to the 100th episode and our 10,000th download all time. And as we salute those folks, as we get towards the end of the year here in our season wrap up show, finish up here in the Formula One 2025 season. Yes, we've talked about culture, we've talked about conspiracy theories. One of the teams that seemingly had the least controversy was Mercedes AMG Petronas with George Russell and Kimi Antonelli, even though Kimi had his moments where he started off strong, kind of left us there for a little bit in the middle of the season, then had his death threats for a simple mistake that he made in the second to last race that happened to give just the right amount of points to Lando to clinch the championship. But suddenly Toto wasn't the news story this year, other than him selling a portion of his ownership stake to George Kurtz from CrowdStrike.
Yeah, I mean, both George and Kimi did, I think, what they could with what they had. I don't think they were going into the season thinking they were going to win constructors or drivers. I think that was pretty obvious. I mean, and listen, I think the future is very bright for Kimi. Uh, Something that kid did that I was really actually impressed with because it's something showing that he remembers the history of the sport. Of course, we all, if you're a Formula One fan, you know who Ayrton Senna is. And I don't know if you saw this, Kevin. He went to, I guess, didn't tell anybody. He just kind of snuck out, kind of blended in with the crowd. Had a book about Senna. Went to the gravesite where Senna is buried, and just sat there close and read that book. How cool is that? You have a 19-year-old kid not even close to being alive when Senna was around. And here he is respecting, a man who's probably the most revered in the sport. I just was kind of amazed by that. It sort of shows me that the kid's got this character where he cares about the sport. He's passionate about it. It's not just oh, I want to be an F1 driver when I grow up. I think he has probably a better understanding of the sport than maybe some adults do. I just thought that was one of the coolest things that he did.
And I only heard part of that story, John. I didn't hear the whole thing, but that is incredibly cool to have a young kid that, in this day and age, they could be distracted by so many other things or have the least cares about some of the history that has come before them
Yeah,
to honor somebody like Senna in such a way. Uh, but thinking of things like that, and you talk about the least amount of turmoil or controversy within a team, there were very few that, if actually there's really none that didn't have their share. I mean, you look at
right.
Aston Martin. You've got our we've got Lance Stroll, and we've got Fernando Alonso, who made the best of it. And their big news story for the season: Adrian Newey taking over as
Adrian
team
Newey.
principal.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. Which is big
And yet
news.
it looks like that is huge news, and it'll be interesting. And this is something that we haven't really even addressed yet in our Formula One season review, is the coming of the new car in 2026, let alone the new team in Cadillac. But is perhaps Adrian Newey moving into that role, one of the, premier car designers of all time? Maybe the ace in the hole that Lawrence Stroll was looking for with the new car rigs coming up to give them the edge out of the gate compared to some of these other teams? Maybe so. What are your thoughts?
I think Adrian Newey sees air. That's what I think, because the man does create some magic. Um, so let's go
He's the
back
last
to when.
airbender.
Seriously, the guy you can just. What was the joke I heard? That if we can't see air, do fish see water?
Yeah.
But anyways, sorry, cheesy joke. But I think with Adrian, we have to remember when he got on board with Red Bull, it was almost the same situation. While Red Bull was a brand new team, being that we have completely new regulations, it may as well be a brand new team. Um, I know for a fact he is not afraid to let people go who he feels can't perform, because I've read his book as well, and I know he is not as cold, of course, as maybe say a Christian Horner or a Helmut Marko. He's not that at all. He's actually from what I can tell, he's a very professional. I would say that very British professional type of guy. You know what I mean? That very
Hmm.
astute. Everything's handled with grace and care. That's Adrian Newey, and I believe that it's gonna. I think he enjoys this type of challenge. This is what keeps him going in the sport, because he's not a young man anymore. I believe he's in his. I think he's 62 now. I believe. Don't quote me on that. But this man now has a new challenge with a new car, new regs, a fantastic driver in Alonso, even though he's getting up there in age. He's 42. Unfortunately, you have a terrible driver in Lance Stroll, who I still attest does not want to be in Formula One. He's only there to appease his father, because I think his father wants this like vicariously living his life through uh, Lance, which is awful. But um, yeah, I think if we're going to see anything positive come out of this new car, which I've heard this car is terrible, I don't know how reliable that is, because it, the rumor mill for Formula One is always churning. But I've heard a lot of people say that this car is very difficult to work with. They like this last car was called the ground effects era. I guess we're losing all of that. Now we're going to have moving fins on the car, and the cars are smaller
Hmm.
this year. They're trying to promote, passing more so than ever before. Um, which, my solution is just go back to V10s and have a good day. That's my solution, but that'll never happen, unfortunately.
Right. Flat
But
bottom cars. Forget the hybrids.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Just go back to real race cars, please. Not that these aren't, but you get my drift. So yeah, this new car, honestly, we're not going to know jack shit about this car until it hits the track, until they do testing. And even then, the testing that we see in Spain, when they always do every year, we're not going to really know anything. Only they are, and they're certainly not going to release anything hardcore or definitive because they don't want the other teams to know they're either a doing great or doing terrible. They don't, they're not. They're going to sandbag it the whole time, as they should. You don't want your team know other teams knowing what you're doing. So yeah, this new car regulations, we're going to have to see. I'm nervous about it. I'm nervous that these cars aren't going to do anything more than what these last generation of cars have done. But we'll see, I guess.
I guess we will. But if anybody needs an ace in the hole, man, I think it could. It could. Not saying it will, but it could be, as we said, the last Airbender, Adrian Newey, to
Could
make
be.
something, make roll that turd and glitter kind of a thing.
Yeah. I think if he does give them both a great car, the problem is the drivers at that point because you're going to have Alonso who is going to be aged out eventually, right? Um, give him a great car, yes, he's. I mean, hell, he did great at the last race. So I think the problem though is going to be Lance Stroll. I don't think he's a good driver. I never have thought he was a good driver. He's competent enough to drive a Formula One car because we know that the actual driving a Formula One car in itself is not easy.
Right.
I don't think he has the skill. I don't think he has the heart. I think that's the biggest part of it. The man doesn't have the heart. I don't think he does anyway. I could be wrong, but obviously I've never spoken to the man in my life. But I think there's a big problem there with it. They have I think Aston Martin has a driver situation, and then when Alonso does age out, they'll go after Oscar Piastri.
And if 2026 is another 2025 for Piastri, that could very well happen. Um,
That's my
speaking of
wild card prediction. But yeah,
Yeah, and kind of speaking of those things, it's got me thinking of the whole Red Bull Racing Bulls thing, and Racing Bulls, honestly, they had a pretty respectable season despite their losing Laurent Mekies to the parent team, despite the constant revolving door in that team between Hajar and Lawson and now
yeah,
Hajar being
Sonoda,
promoted to the
yeah,
big team for next year,
yeah,
Sonoda.
and
Um,
and Lawson, that kid ain't no saint on the track. That dude pretty frequently screws people over or himself.
Well, right. I mean, poor Isaac Hadjar, man. Right, started the season like crashed right at the beginning of the first race and was in
Pretty
tears
slow.
at his debut, thinking his career was over,
And
and
Helmut
actually did a
Marko being a
pretty
jerk about it.
right, telling him basically he needed to suck it up. This isn't effectively this sport isn't for pussies, so quit acting like one. Right. Uh, But now you've got Hadjar taking the most undesirable seat in Formula One, is the number two to Max. It's almost like career suicide, but you can't say no because it's Red Bull. You have to take it. You can't not take it, right?
Yeah, I think the only saving grace he's going to have is this new car. I mean, because let's face
Right.
it, we already know they build the car to Max's liking. And, you know, every driver that has sat in that damn seat, and I'll be honest, listen, hats off to Checo. That man held on for as long as he could for the car he was given. I mean, he even was able to keep up with Max at times, or at least stay a place or two ahead behind rather. Then you put in Lawson. Well, that lasted all of something like what 5, 6 races. Then you put in Yuki.
Right.
Well, now we're getting rid of him now. Well, let's bring in Hodger. It's like, yeah, it's like I feel like the second seat for Red Bull is just the guillotine of the fucking F1 world, man. It's this double-edged sword of yes, I'm driving for Red Bull Racing now, but I'm not Max Verstappen, and he never will be.
And my
Let's
career
face
is
it.
likely going to be over in a season.
Yeah, I'm going to end up going back to Racing Bulls or whoever and now that Sauber's going away, he might end up over at Audi, which is what Sauber's becoming, or God forbid you end up over at Alpine. Oh my God, you know, it's like it's just a bad place to be, man. I know he's excited. I know he's happy. I don't know, man. Look outside looking in from what we've all seen. I just don't, and who knows? Maybe with Helmet gone now and with Christian Horner gone now, and maybe it'll be a little bit different in the new car. Maybe with those three factors in, it might be a little bit different. At least I hope so, because he's a good kid. He wears his heart on his sleeve. He wants to win, obviously. He next to Carlos Sainz, he's quickly coming up as uh, one of my favorite drivers out there because he is such a genuinely good-hearted person who just wants to race, and he's gonna get screwed by this car, man. I know he is.
Well, and yeah, and that's where I'm hopeful that this new car is different enough that it evens the intra-team things out a bit so that there's not such a big step. Because if you think about it, had Red Bull been a little bit bigger picture thinking, they wouldn't have had the disasters that they had all the way back to Danny Rick and to Gasly and to Lawson and to
Albon.
yada, yada, yada. Albon, right. And speaking of that, I know you, John, I know you watched it. I know most of you Seventh Gear Over It fans watched the Abu Dhabi finale. Was it just me, or did you also find it incredibly humorous that Yuki Tsunoda got penalized for what he did pushing Lando off track? And he's like, wait, what? Me? Was that the dumbest, most ridiculous thing ever? I'm like, really?
You talk about his reaction to it?
Yes, when they called him on the radio and said he got a 5 second penalty.
Yeah, I know. He acted like, what, me? What do you mean? I got to, dude, come on. You were swerving out there like you were trying to warm up your tires, trying to block
You were
Lando.
swerving like you were drunk driving home after bar closing time, dude.
Right. And then when he pushes Lando off the road, off the track, yeah, exactly. What do you mean? Penalty? Yes, Yuki. You drove the guy off the damn track. And I heard some of these arguments too were saying that Lando should have gotten 5 seconds also. How about no? Because he was attempting
Right?
to pass him and then drove him off the damn road. What is your problem? So, and I know it's the Verstappen fans who didn't want Max or didn't want Lando to win. I know where it comes from. But let's be real here. That was one of the most, and honestly, even then, he didn't do anything to help Max in any way, shape, or form with that stunt. Not at all. Why don't you just try to stay in front of the guy? I know it was DRS and he was coming down on him pretty hard, but he could have. I'm not a race car driver, so forgive me. I just live in my simulation world. But from what I saw, he probably could have dove into that turn, into that chicane, because that's the toughest chicane on that track. He could have dove into that a little bit earlier and kept Lando from going around him after the DRS, and then probably backed him up for at least a few more seconds. That would have been doing something. Yuki did nothing. And I like Yuki. He's okay. Very aggressive when on the radio, I should say. Very aggressive on the radio. But it was just a dumb move. And the shock of, what do you mean I got, it's like, the kid, his hand in a cookie jar. Oh, I wasn't taking no cookies. Yeah, you were. I'm watching you
Right.
take them.
And in subsequent laps, he just laid down and made it easy to let, Mercedes go by and Ferrari go by.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, ridiculousness.
But it's over.
Yeah,
Now, see,
exactly.
there's another one. There's another career over, right? What did they say? He's a reserve driver or a test driver now for Red Bull.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, good luck with
good
that
for him
one.
for still having. Good luck for him still having a job, I guess. Yeah, it's fine. But no,
Right.
at least no race car driver I ever met and said, I'm happy being the test driver in that one. But
Well, of course, because they're staying in the game for, banking on the come, so to speak, as my wife likes to say. But let's turn to a couple of
all right.
more the feel good stories of the season,
Sure.
like Williams and Carlos Sainz. What did they
Yes.
wind up coming?
Yes.
Fifth in the Constructors' Championship thanks to his late
Yes.
season run? How
Yep.
cool
After
is
those
that to think
last.
just a
Yep.
few short years ago they were on the brink of insolvency?
Man, it's so good to see.
They bring in James Voles
It's
from Mercedes. They bring in Sainz
yeah.
thanks to Ferrari being stupid.
Yeah, no, that was the best thing ever for Ferrari did the best thing they ever could have done for Williams, and that was be stupid with Carlos. Um, you know me, I don't really have a team. I'm team homeless. I think honestly, next year I'm really going to start pulling for Williams, and I know they're not going to probably not going to win a championship. Hell, I even bought a Carlos Sainz hat. It's going to be here soon because that's how much I adore that man as a race car driver and as a person with the whole sparkles thing. I don't know if you saw that story with the little girl asking him to have the sticker on the back of his helmet, and now it's like a permanent fixture within Carlos Sainz's
Hmm.
driving, which is I think is fantastic. But yeah, man, Albon is great. Also, you can tell he gets frustrated on the track sometimes with his engineer, but it's part of the game. It's no big deal. But I am seriously happy to see that I don't know how many millions of dollars extra they got for getting fifth place. I know it's significant, and I know, of course, they desperately needed that cash, which they got now. And so I'm really gonna be pulling for Williams next season. I also would like to see, hey, if things at Ferrari go well for uh, Lewis and he looks like he might win the championship, great. But I'm really gonna pull for Williams. They're awesome. I think James Vowles is just a fantastic leader. He's
Yeah,
probably
he is.
probably the most well put together next to Toto team principal out there, I believe.
He is exactly what Williams needed when they needed it, and it's showing now. And hopefully, with that shot in the arm with that fifth place in the constructors championship, that'll help them on the commercial side as well, so they can really, you know, robustly, fill out their budget, so to speak. But speaking of feel good stories, Williams being one of them, and Carlos Sainz. By the way, how cool was it at the end of Abu Dhabi that Carlos came up to Lando and kind of gave him the little, shove in the chest, from
Yeah,
kind of calling back to the days of when they were teammates at McLaren, and like,
it was a
way to
very
go,
guy
boy.
moment, very bro moment.
Very bro moment. Exactly right. Exactly right. But one of the other cool stories of the season I thought happened to be Ollie Behrman at Haas and that whole Haas deal. In all of this post Gunter Steiner era with Aoki running the show. But how cool is it to see Behrman doing well and challenging and getting his elbows out and fighting for positions and kind of taking it to Ocon a good bit of the time?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, again, it's you're dealing. You're talking about a team that has virtually tractors for cars. But yeah, Berman's a cool kid, man. Right? He always seems happy. I've seen him in a lot of post race interviews where even his successes surprise him, which is fun to see. Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I think he's another personality within the sport that I think it needs. I think sometimes, and you know this, Kevin, sometimes a race car driver's ego gets a little out of hand. And
No,
he
that
seems
never
like the kind of
happens.
I know I'm telling lies. I'm sorry. Tell me lies. Tell me sweet little lies. Anyways, but yeah, he seems like a really good kid. Obviously, he's skilled. I think and that's another one up and comer to watch. And it's almost getting to the point like where Indy's at, where the depth of talent's really starting to get deep. And I think we need to. That's another young man that we need to watch. Could you imagine like maybe something like a Mercedes and maybe like a Ferrari battle between Kimi Antonelli and Ollie Berman? Be cool to watch, man. I bet that would be fun.
Well, and we're going to kind of circle back on all this here in a minute because I guess we're kind of down near the last couple teams that we haven't talked about yet. Kick Sauber being one of them, which is no longer Sauber as of
Over.
the end of the checkered flag falling in
That'll
Abu
be
Dhabi,
Audi. Yep.
but it will be Audi. Nico Hulkenberg is helping to head that up, but let's just think for a second. As much as we may or may not have liked the green and black liveries of those Kick Saubers, kudos to Peter Sauber for all of those years of sports car involvement with the Mercedes that kind of gave birth to Carl Wendlinger and Michael Schumacher's careers. And then everything he's done over all those years between BMW power plants and Ralph Schumacher and the Sauber and all those drivers that he helped along the way to now it's kind of that next phase of his career. So we'll see how Sauber transforms into Audi and what the corporate heads do at Audi compared to what Ferrari's doing and the others to see where they kind of shake out
Mm.
in 2026. I think that's going to be I pessimistically, I just don't see with a transition year and all the newness that they're going to be particularly competitive, but who knows? Who knows?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I heard that the fact that next season will be the first time in 30 years that Sauber hasn't been on the track in Formula One.
Yeah.
That's that's saying something. I believe that's the fact that I heard. But yeah, you know, and with I really Bortoletto. I'm not quite sure what to make of him yet. I know Alonso is his manager. Uh, he seems like he's a skilled driver. I don't know where he's gonna be in say 5 years within the sport. Yeah, the jury's still out for me on that one. Of course, you have Nico Hulkenberg, who's great. Also, a guy who's getting up there in age for the sport.
That's
But
true.
you know, this the Audi program could revive new life into his career. Who knows? Again, that's one of those big question marks for next season. But of course, I think
Yeah.
the big one, I think the big question is, well, what's Cadillac going to do? Right? That's the big question here.
Well, we'll get to Cadillac in a second because the other one that's kind of circling the drain, and I find it, as much as I don't like to talk about other teams and people's misfortunes, what the F happened to Alpine this year?
I
Now
don't
they're
know. I don't
losing
know.
the Renault power plant. They finished last in the constructors between Gasly and uh, help me out here. I forget the other driver's name. Another Colapinto. That's who I was trying to think of.
Colin Hood, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Man, between Colapinto and Bortoletto, I don't know what to make of those two. But Alpine was a complete shit show this year, and Flavio Briatore is running the show there. And now they've lost
He's a
Renault as their
crook,
power
so
plant.
whatever.
Is I mean, is it just everything he touches turns to crap? Or what? But
I,
I don't, man. Out they're in a world of hurt for next year, man.
I really just don't because they've been such a nothing burger the last 6 months. I don't know what to say about them. I really don't. I like Ocon as a driver. I think he's great. I think if he was on a better car, because there have been flashes in the pan with him this year when he's been in the mix. Half the time he gets swiped by somebody, mostly Liam Lawson, I
Well,
think.
well,
But
right.
I
Because I
don't
mean,
know what to say about this team.
well, that's true. I mean, Ocon was trying to put his teammate Behrman in his place because he's over at Haas, but you got Colapinto and Gasly, and I feel like Gasly is a talented guy, and he deserves better
Yeah,
than he's
no,
gotten at Alpine.
yeah, Gasly's great.
So,
Um, yeah. That's sorry, that's who I was thinking back to when they were both together at Alpine. My mistake. But
oh, that's
yeah,
okay.
but yeah, Gasly. Again, I think Gasly in a better machine would be better because again, he had some moments when he was great, but the car wasn't there, the team wasn't there. I don't know. I'm just kind I. It's that emoji of throwing your hands up in the air. Like I don't know. I don't know what to say about this team.
It kind of makes me think back to just a few seasons ago before Ricardo was out when he signed for that one season with Renault and then left. And like,
When he left Red Bull.
what would have happened had he stayed? How would that have changed the trajectory of that team, or would it have?
I don't think it would have because I think we're gonna just. I think if Ricardo would have stayed at Red Bull when he moved from there to to Renault rather, it'd have been the same eating of its own culture in Red Bull with Max. It just would have been. It would have been
Right?
the same. It would have been the same thing as Seb and Mark Webber. I think.
Yeah, I think Alpine is just like kind of like you alluded to. It's eating itself from the inside out, and I think Flavio could very well be the cancer that is where
Mm,
that's coming from.
I can't even believe that they let that man back onto a track. But whatever.
I know.
It's whatever. Anyways.
So that's we've kind of run through I think every team on the grid here for the 2025 season, but
Mm.
you mentioned it. The big question mark, aside from how the new car is going to be, is what is the new Cadillac team going to be like with Checo and Bottas as their two main drivers? Wow, that there are so many angles to this story.
Uh, and none of these answers are going to come until the season starts. Even then, Cadillac, and this is the proper approach, I think. Even Cadillac has stepped back and said, "Look, we don't plan on winning anything. This is going to be try to do your best. We're going to collect data, then we're going to head into 2027." And I think they're going to keep doing that until they finally have their own power plant. Because right now they're borrowing Ferraris, or they're a customer of Ferrari.
Hmm.
Uh, and then they say they're going to have their own power plant. Who knows what that'll be like? I think they have to have it by 28. I don't recall. A couple of years, I
Yeah, I
think.
believe it's. Mhm.
Yeah. Uh, so we'll see. But I'm excited to see this. First of all, Valerie Botas Valtteri is amazing. Valtteri is one of the kookiest, funniest guys out there. All the commercials he's done always make me laugh. All the stuff he was doing for Mercedes for showing what's going on. Then the whole like outro of him leaving, that was hilarious. When they were doing the team photo, I don't know if you saw it. They had uh, Kimi and George on the cars, and the whole team out there. Then he like runs out there and like does the whole like spread thing across like the beach pose. It's like hilarious. Um, Also excited for Checo. I think this might be his redemption arc. I think if that team performs decent and I think remains consistent, I think a lot of people are going to sit back and go, you know what, Red Bull did him dirty. There's even a Formula One troll account called F1 Troll on Instagram, and it says on there, it has a picture of Checo and it has Thanos from Marvel, and it says, "Perhaps I treated you too harshly." And he actually saw it and like quoted it and said, "Perhaps."
Yeah,
Because we're seeing what happened with Red Bull, right? Um,
exactly.
with the culture there. But I'm excited to see it. Super Bowl Sunday, they're going to reveal the livery. They're going to reveal the car, so that'll be cool. I, I don't know why I have this in my head. I think black and gold is going to be the way they go. I could be completely wrong. I think for some reason that sticks in my head. I don't know why, but I think that might be the way they go. Who knows? But I'm excited to see it. Matter of fact, just on a whim, they have I sent it to you earlier today on LinkedIn. They have a U.S. opportunities. Just give us your resume, and if we like you, we'll call you. I threw mine in. I mean, the hell with it. Why not? Right? I mean, the worst they could say is nothing. So
Right. What do you got to
we're gonna
lose?
see how that goes. What do I got to lose? Nothing. So but yeah, I'm very excited. I wish them the best. I hope they come out of the gate swinging, man. I hope some miracle happens and they get like second and third or even a win this next season, which would be absolutely hilarious because then the ones I would laugh at would be two. I'd really laugh at Ferrari because here you are, the greatest Formula One team, and you got beat by a rookie team. Good job, Ferrari. And also Red Bull, like, oh, see, not even Max Verstappen could stop it. So that's what I hope. Not going to happen, but that's what I hope.
Well, it'll be interesting because now the guys, the Dan Towers, that's kind of taken over, Andretti Global. Those guys have enough money to play in the Shark Tank that is, the cartel of Formula One team principals, whether it's Toto or Frederick Vasseur or I mean, you name it. Uh, my big question with Cadillac is I still can't quite figure out. They've signed former Indy 500 winner and Penske driver Simon Pagenaud to be their simulator guy to do the sim work
Yeah.
to help Valtteri and Checo out, and don't. I don't quite understand, and I don't have all the insight or anything into that. But here was a guy whose career, his IndyCar career, was abruptly ended. What, 3 years ago with a big crash at Mid Ohio? Where
Yep.
he hasn't driven an IndyCar since. And I know he was an advisor, to some teams, a team in the series this last year or so. But in this day and age of Formula One, and nothing against Simon Pagenaud, but are we sure that he's the best choice for that role? They must think so in some way, shape, or form. Either that, or he's got some dirt on him, one or the other.
Maybe. I mean, he hasn't even done any sports car racing or anything like that, right? He's just kind of been
No,
sidelined, hasn't
yeah,
he?
exactly.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, at the end of the day, you could say it's just a simulator, um, which with this day and age, I mean, even somebody like you or I could buy a pretty fancy simulator setup and have almost the same results. So I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what sort of. I don't know. Maybe it's just they didn't find anybody. I mean, maybe there's just not enough qualified people out there. Guys obviously got experience, but again, I'm with you. I'm not quite sure about that decision. I can only fall back on the fact that maybe it's because it's only the simulator. I don't even know if he's going to plan on being a test driver directly. I don't think so. I think it's just strictly simulator time.
Well,
Maybe
and
they just need a monkey in the cockpit. I don't know.
that's where the Colton Herta thing comes in, right? With him giving up his IndyCar seat to go to F2 to be the reserve driver for Cadillac and get his super license points and make the step up in 2027. It'll be definitely an interesting upcoming season. So to wrap up Formula One, before we kind of talk about what's lies on the horizon for the Seventh Gear Over F show, Seventh Gear Over F fans, here's a question for you. Based on everything that you just heard John and I talk about for the last hour or so, tell us, and you can comment. Make sure you comment below here or comment in the section. Who do you think is next year's World Championship favorite in Formula One? Whether it's car driver combination, team, driver solo, just let us know what you think. But keep the answers reasonable. Don't come up with like Danny Ricciardo. you know.
Yeah.
Although
Somebody
I will
relevant is
say
good.
I would have loved to have seen Danny Ricciardo and Valtteri Bottas as teammates at Cadillac. That would have been a freaking hoot to
It would
have
just
those
be a
two guys as
comedy show.
teammates.
It's not even a Formula One
It
team. It's
would
just a
totally
comedy
be a
show.
comedy show. Right. But here's another question I have for you, John, and Seventh Gear Over Red fans. You can chime in on this as well. Given the plethora of rookies this year, and we talked about them, whether it was Colapinto, Bortoleto, Kimi Antonelli, Isaac Hadjar, Liam Lawson, Ollie Behrman, who in your mind, John, was the top rookie of the 2025 Formula One season?
Oh man, that's a rough one.
yeah,
For me, it comes down between Kimi and uh, Oliver Berman. Oof. You know what? Because he had podiums, I have to go with Kimi Antonelli.
all right, that's a solid choice. And I remember saying, and I think I even said it to you at the beginning of the year, it might have been Australia. Uh, After that race, I was like, this kid's going to be a star because he started out of the
Yeah.
gate pretty strong. And then he had sort of that midseason lull and then kind of got it back together towards the end of the season, minus that little misstep at Qatar that everybody crucified him for. But to
Yep.
me, in terms of the overall season, it came down to a toss up for me between Isaac Hadjar and Ollie Behrman.
Mm.
And I don't know that there's something for me to pick between the two. I mean, Hadjar, as we talked about earlier in the show, the kid, wears his heart on his sleeve. He drives his ass off, as did Behrman, given the equipment that he was up against. So I guess for me, both Hadjar and Behrman are my co-rookies of the year in Formula One.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. There's no argument from here. I mean, those guys are great also. And yeah, Hadjar is. I mean, listen, Hadjar did good enough to get the second seat in Red Bull and maybe possibly in his career. We'll see. But yeah, no, those are
We will
solid
see.
choices as well.
And
I also,
sort of a bonus
if I could,
question.
uh,
Yeah.
well, I was going to say, to answer the question that we're asking the audience, who do I think is going to be the champion next year? Um, if what I'm hearing is true from Formula One information, Mercedes apparently has a very good program going with the new car. I'm going to throw this one out there. I think there's a good possibility that we're going to see George win the drivers' championship next year. Yeah,
Mm,
that's my prediction. That's my prediction.
very interesting.
Yeah.
George Russell. That
What
would
about you?
that
What
would
about
make
you? Who do you?
I don't discount George if that program is as good
Mm-hmm.
as it is, but I also feel like right now the leadership at McLaren has got such a stranglehold on how that program operates, and now that Stella's got
Sure.
a championship off his back since he screwed one up years ago at Ferrari, I feel like the 2026 championship is theirs to lose unless that new car in their hands is complete pile of shit.
Sure. Yeah. No, that's a solid choice too. I agree. I mean, um, and again, I'm only going by with what I heard with saying that Mercedes has apparently this 2026 car uh, somewhat figured out. If they do, yeah,
Hmm.
we'll see. So yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, no, yeah, exactly. I think so. So yeah, but no, that's obviously a great choice. And again, once again, if Red Bull figures out the car too, Max is gonna win.
All right, gang. Not to mention the fact we didn't even talk about where we think the whack a mole that Christian Horner is going to show up at some point, but that's for another show. All right, so seventh gear overhead fans, as we get ready to throw the checkered flag on this season finale and Formula One season wrap up, we want to thank you very much for all of your viewership. As we said, this is also a celebration of our 100th episode as well as our 10,000th download on the show. Thank you all for that in the 114 countries worldwide. In 2026, moving forward, we've got some really cool stuff on deck here. There is a content day out at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway coming up towards the end of January that yours truly is expecting to be at to get some interviews with some of the current full time or the projected full time 2026 IndyCar Series drivers at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. We are also looking to do some live stream shows, perhaps some extensive streaming live shows from the Indianapolis Motor Speedway during the month of May. We've been kind of putting the word out there a little bit already with some great feedback. A lot of folks that are interested in helping bring that to fruition. So stay tuned for more information on that from the greatest spectacle in podcasting. But John, any last words here before we wrap up the 2026 season here and get ready for 2025 season rather and get ready for 2026?
Just thank you for having me back on as the guest for the 100th episode, and we could talk extensively like we did about the wrap up of Formula One. That was a lot of fun. Uh, but really, that's about it. Thank you. I do enjoy coming back on these occasions and talking about these things. And of course, I'm sure I'll be back to do more just as time allows. So, but yeah, if you want to continue watching, or if you guys want out there want to look at my pretty photographs of cars, you can go to Instagram and just look up Late Night Lap, all one word. I'll be at Grand Rahal Performance tomorrow, so as an invited guest. So I'm definitely gonna have photos of that, and I'm sure a bunch of other stuff. I'm probably gonna go to Miami here at the end of January, and a few other things. I think I'll be getting press credentials for a big car show out there. And again, there's also late night lapmedia.com. And if you're in the Cincinnati area or hell, if wherever you are, you want me to come out and take a photo of your car, I'll be there.
Awesome. Well, John, thank you for coming back on for this special episode, and thanks for helping us get there. It certainly gave us that kick that we needed, and I'm sure Seventh Gear Overhead fans, you've enjoyed us having our banter and our sparring about stuff over the course of the season. And thanks to all of our fantastic guests. We named just a few of them, but Seventh Year Overhead fans, you've got over 100 episodes on the audio side to go back and listen to catch some of the greats in motorsports, and we've got a whole lot more coming up. So in 2026, so you'll definitely want to stay tuned for the greatest spectacle in podcasting. See you next year. Bye bye.